Hello, everyone. Welcome back to English Pod. My name is Marco.
And I'm Erica.
And today we're at a wedding ceremony.
All right.
Another nice wedding.
Yeah.
But of course, it wouldn't be English Pod unless we have something unexpected happening at this wedding. Okay, so we're going to be talking about hands.
Oh, but Marco, what is there to say about a hand?
Well, as you may or may not know, each finger has a name on your hand.
Okay.
So we're going to learn what those names are in English.
Perfect. And also we're going to learn about some common phrases that you might hear in an English wedding.
Exactly, because usually it's old English, maybe English that's not used anymore.
All right. Well, I'm excited to find out what this unexpected event is. So let's listen to our dialogue for the first time.
The rings, please. May this ring be blessed, so he who gives it and she who wears it may abide in peace and continue in love until life's end.
With this ring, I thee wed, wear it as a symbol of our love and commitment.
Honey, that's my pinky. The ring goes on the ring finger.
This one?
That's my index finger.
No, right. This one, right?
That's the thumb, Nick.
I got it. This is the ring finger.
That's my middle finger, Nick. This is my ring finger.
All right, embarrassing moments for the groom.
Yes.
Right? Confusing the fingers in front of all his friends and family. Not good. So I mentioned before that we're going to learn the names of each finger in your hand, so let's get started. Let's take a look at these in language takeaway.
Language takeaway.
All right. Well, why don't we start with the smallest finger on your hand?
The smallest finger on your hand. That's called the
pinky.
Sometimes people call it the little finger.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
So the pinky. And the next finger
is the one the groom couldn't find.
The ring finger.
The ring finger.
So this is, of course, like the name says, where the wedding ring is usually placed.
Exactly.
This finger.
Yep.
Now the next one is a controversial finger.
That must be the middle finger.
Okay, easy. Middle finger.
Other example.
So why is it controversial?
Well, you know, if you put your middle finger up and you put
like you're doing right now to me?
I'm sorry, Marco, I'll do it this way. And all other fingers down, you are making a very rude gesture,
It's
a rude sign.
So what would you call that?
I would call that giving the middle finger.
Giving the middle finger. Or I've also heard the phrase flip someone off.
Yes. Or also
flip the bird. Exactly.
Yeah.
Or give him the bird.
Yes. So all phrases that you can use when you are showing only your middle finger to somebody.
It's not very polite.
No,
don't do it. Oh, unless somebody deserves it, I guess.
Well, we won't talk about that. But what we will talk about is the next finger.
Index finger.
So this is the finger you use to point.
Right.
Yep.
The index finger. Any idea why they call it the index finger?
Because when you're looking through the index of a book, you always use this finger.
Right. I think you also use this finger to pass pages on a book, right?
Yeah. Okay, don't believe anything I just told you.
Well, we're not sure. Maybe you guys know the real answer to this.
All right.
And our last finger, the most important one.
The Thumb.
The thumb.
Thumb.
Okay, so that's the short but fat finger. The movable one. The one that you use to play PlayStation and all
video
that
games.
Stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so the pronunciation here. Do you say the B at the end of this word?
No, I actually only pronounce the M. The thumb.
The thumb.
Yeah, you wouldn't say the thumb.
No.
Vocabulary preview.
Okay, so now that we're clear on all 5 fingers, let's listen to our dialogue again, and then we'll come back and talk about these difficult phrases that the priest used.
The rings, please. May this ring be blessed, so he who gives it and she who wears it may abide in peace and continue in love until life's end.
With this ring, I thee wed, wear it as a symbol of our love and commitment.
Honey, that's my pinky. The ring goes on the ring finger.
This one?
That's my index finger.
No, right. This one, right?
That's the thumb, Nick.
Okay, I got it. This is the ring finger.
That's my middle finger, Nick. This is my ring finger.
Well, this is really common wedding speak, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really common. That's what usually the priest or the person who is marrying somebody would say.
Well, why don't we look at some of these phrases now? Because it's really interesting to talk about their meaning. So, the first one, may this ring be blessed.
May this ring be blessed.
May this ring be blessed.
So what does it mean when you bless something or someone?
Well, usually the religious leader does this, right? And he's giving good wishes to that thing.
Could be for an object or to a person, right?
Yes.
You can be blessed as well.
And so these good wishes usually come from God.
Okay, great. So what about our next phrase?
Abide in peace.
Wow, so this verb abide.
It means to live.
Dialogue.
To live,
Yep.
to be in peace.
Yep.
But it's very fancy, and I don't know if you use it anymore.
No, I think you would never use this word in conversation or even very rarely in writing. It's quite old.
Yes, definitely, I would agree. So, abide in peace. What about our next phrase? I like this, and it's the common phrase you'll hear in all movies and in all marriages.
Yep. I thee wed.
With this ring, I thee wed.
Okay, we've got two words in here that are also older English words. So, thee.
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 So this is a Middle English term for you.
You.
Yes.
Right? So can I say I love thee?
You could. That would be very romantic, but also inappropriate for the office.
But it's very old English. I guess you would, if you're reading Shakespeare, you would definitely
yeah.
come upon this, right?
Yes, yes.
And what about wed?
This is also an old verb for the action of marrying someone.
So I can say we will be wed next year.
But don't say that now because you'll sound quite silly.
Yeah.
It's too old-fashioned.
Yeah, I guess so. But it's good to know, especially if you guys are reading something a
Yes.
little bit more classical.
Or you plan to get married to an English person.
All right. And our last phrase, wear it as a symbol of our love and commitment.
Wear it as a symbol of our love and commitment.
So now he's referring to the rings, right? Wear
Yes.
the ring
Yeah.
as
A sign.
a representation
Yes.
of love and commitment. So why would you wear a ring as a symbol of something,
Well, obviously, love, you can't see it, you can't touch it.
right?
So you need something to show you that it's there. So you need a sign of that love.
Something that you can see. So that's what the ring represents.
Yeah. But how about this word commitment?
A commitment is a strong promise. So you promise to love that person, to take care of them,
Yes.
etc.
Yeah. Okay, great. So now we are a little bit more familiar with some of the language you hear in a wedding ceremony. And we also know all of the names of the
Vocabulary
fingers.
preview.
Exactly.
So why don't we listen to the dialogue one more time to hear these all in context?
The rings, please. May this ring be blessed, so he who gives it and she who wears it may abide in peace and continue in love until life's end.
With this ring, I thee wed. Wear it as a symbol of our love and commitment.
Honey, that's my pinky. The ring goes on the ring finger.
This one?
That's my index finger.
No, right. This one, right?
That's the thumb, Nick.
Okay, I got it. This is the ring finger.
That's my middle finger, Nick. This is my ring finger.
All right. So now it's perfectly clear and a romantic dialogue in the end.
Yeah, very romantic.
Although a little bit embarrassing.
Yeah.
So what about wedding rings? Now we have different types of rings, right? We have the wedding ring, the one that we just heard.
Yeah.
But we also have an engagement ring.
Yeah. In most English-speaking countries, the woman is very, very lucky because she gets 2 rings.
Right.
So when the man asks her to marry him, he gives her
A diamond ring.
Yeah.
That's the engagement ring.
and it's really important that he does this. And it's also really important that he spends a lot of money on the diamonds.
I know about this. Diamonds are forever, right?
Yes. And the tradition is you must spend at least 1 month's salary.
Wow.
Yep.
Is that it?
Yeah.
So the girl gets a diamond engagement ring, and then on wedding day she gets the wedding ring.
Yes.
And usually, will she wear both of them?
Yeah, she'll always wear both of them. So the engagement ring goes closest to you, and then the wedding ring on top.
And the engagement ring, it represents
the commitment to marry her.
So-
No, wait. The commitment from the man to marry her.
Okay, so that it's a symbol that they will get married.
Yes, it's a symbol of the promise.
Now, what happens if they break up and they don't get married? Does he get the ring back?
I don't know. Okay, here's the rule.
Dialogue.
If he was a jerk, no.
Yeah.
But if it was sort of like a happy breakup, then okay.
Okay. I guess it's a big risk, right? Yeah. All right, so that's all for today, guys. Let us know if you guys have any interesting wedding stories. I know that sometimes weddings can be embarrassing. People, I don't know, objecting. Maybe I've seen the groom faint.
Or even fall in a pool.
Fall in a pool. So if you have any stories, please share them with us. Come to englishpod.com. And also, if you have any questions or doubts, Erica and I are always there to answer them.
Well, thanks for listening to this lesson, everyone. And until next time, goodbye.
Second paragraph in the dialogue.
All right, so today we're going to take a deep dive into something kind of quirky, fingers and rings and all the crazy language that comes with them.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, and our inspiration
Other
for this
example.
is this English learning podcast we found. And there's this scene at a wedding, and well, the groom doesn't quite know where the ring finger is,
Yeah, putting a ring on can be more complicated than you think.
for sure. So like
Yeah.
that podcast, let's start with the pinky finger.
Okay.
The pinky.
Yeah, or the little finger.
Yeah.
I guess it's pretty obvious where it gets its name.
Right, and then moving on, you have the ring finger, which of course is kind of the star of the show at a wedding.
Definitely. But I've always wondered why that specific finger. It seems like it's common across so many different cultures.
Yeah, it's interesting. There are a few theories, but a really popular one says that people used to believe there was a vein running directly from the ring finger to the heart.
Oh, like a love vein or something?
Exactly. They actually called it the vena amoris, which means vein of love. It's not actually anatomically correct, but I guess it's a nice thought. Ah, that's sweet. So from the heart to the hand, sealed with a ring.
Makes sense.
And of course, we can't forget about the middle finger.
Yeah, that one.
Not exactly wedding appropriate unless you're trying to make a statement.
Right. It's funny, though, how many different ways there are to say it. Like in the podcast, they said giving someone the bird.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that one. And then there's flipping the bird and flipping someone off.
So many options.
That's true. It's interesting how just a
Vocabulary
hand gesture
preview?
can be so powerful sometimes. It says more than words can.
Absolutely. And it really depends on the culture, too. Like in some places, the middle finger is super offensive. And then in other places, it's not a big deal. It all depends on the context.
True. So next up, we have the index finger.
The pointer finger.
Right, we use it for pointing, underlining things in books, or, well, indexing things.
Makes you wonder if that's where the name comes from.
Huh. You're right. Maybe.
Well, it is the finger we use
Dialogue.
to direct attention to something specific.
Yeah, and actually in some cultures, pointing at someone is considered rude. So even a simple gesture like that can be complicated.
It can.
Okay, so last but not least, we have the thumb. Our awesome opposable friend that helps us do pretty much everything.
You know, the podcast mentioned something I never noticed before. We don't even pronounce the B in thumb. It's just thumb.
Now that you mention it, you're right.
Hmm?
That is interesting how we just kind of dropped that sound.
Huh.
Okay, so we've covered all 5 fingers. Now let's move on to the main event, the wedding ceremony itself.
Let's do it.
One thing I noticed in the podcast was how the priest used some pretty old-fashioned language. It was like stepping back in time.
Yeah, it can be like that.
So he starts off by saying, "May this ring be blessed."
You know, that word blessed has a lot of meaning, especially at a wedding. It's not just wishing them good luck. It's asking for God to look favorably on them in their marriage.
Oh, wow. I didn't think about it like that. It definitely adds a whole other level of seriousness to it.
It does. And then he goes on to say, abide in peace, which sounds like something right out of Shakespeare.
Right. You don't really hear people say that anymore.
Yeah, abide is super old-fashioned.
Right.
It basically means to live or stay, but it has this feeling of permanence that you don't get with other words.
It definitely sounds more serious.
Yeah.
And then it gets even more Shakespearean with I the wed.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a total time warp.
I know, that means you, and of course wed means to marry, so it really just means I marry you. But the old-fashioned way it's said makes it feel more connected to history and tradition.
You're right. It is kind of cool how these little language things can transport you to a different time.
I think so.
So we've gone from pinky fingers all the way to old-fashioned wedding vows. What's next?
Well, next let's look at that phrase, symbol of love and commitment, and talk about why the ring itself is so important. That phrase, symbol of love and commitment, it really captures what wedding rings are all about.
Yeah, it sounds so simple, but there's actually a lot of meaning packed into it.
Right, the ring itself is just a thing, an object. But it stands for something much bigger, the bond between two people.
So it's like a physical reminder of that connection.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the power of symbols. They help us express those big ideas and feelings in a way we can see and touch.
That makes sense. The podcast also talked about commitment, and I thought it was interesting how they said it's not just some passing feeling.
Right, it's a choice, a decision to be dedicated to someone.
Yeah, and to stick with it even when things get tough. Which makes me think of wedding vows. It's pretty amazing how the language of those promises has stayed so similar over time.
I know, it shows just how important those promises are. The words themselves have a weight of tradition. It's like couples are connecting to all the people who made those same vows before them.
It's beautiful in a way, like a thread through history, tying all these love stories together. So we've talked about the deeper meaning behind the words, but what about the rings themselves? The podcast pointed out that engagement rings and wedding rings are actually kind of unique to English-speaking cultures.
That's true. It's like a reflection of the steps people take in a relationship. The engagement ring is the promise to get married, and then the wedding ring makes it official.
And speaking of engagement rings, we can't forget about the whole diamond tradition. The podcast even joked about how guys are supposed to spend at least a month's salary on it.
Right, that's become the expectation in a lot of places, although it's definitely not a rule everywhere. It's funny how those kinds of social pressures can affect something as romantic as a proposal.
For sure. It seems like a lot of pressure to put on someone. But in the end, an engagement ring is about making a promise. It's a symbol of that commitment.
Exactly. And then on the wedding day, you add the wedding band. And the podcast mentioned that in English-speaking countries, at least, it's usually worn on top of the engagement ring.
Is there a reason for that order?
Well, there's no official rule, but some people see it as a way of showing how the commitment builds over time. The engagement ring is the first promise, and the wedding band makes it final, so it goes on top.
That's pretty cool how even the order of the rings can have a deeper meaning. But talking about rings and relationships, the podcast ended with a question that really got me thinking. What happens to the engagement ring if the couple breaks up before the wedding?
Oh, yeah, that's a tricky one. It can get pretty complicated, especially depending on who broke up with who and if they had any agreements beforehand.
The podcast even joked about whether the guy deserves to get the ring back if he was a jerk.
Right. It brings up some interesting questions about what an engagement ring really means. Is it a gift? Or is it a symbol of a promise that's broken if things don't work out?
It's definitely something to think about. So we've covered a lot of ground here, from the names of our fingers to the ancient words used at weddings and even the whole world of ring traditions.
It's amazing how much depth there is to something like exchanging rings.
It really is. It shows how powerful rituals and symbols can be. They express all these complicated feelings and values that we have as humans.
Weddings are a perfect example of that. They're full of culture and history and, of course, the celebration of love and commitment.
For sure. And I love how the podcast ended by encouraging us to learn about wedding traditions from all over the world.
Me too. It's a good reminder that everyone sees things differently. And by learning about other traditions, we can better understand relationships and how people celebrate them.
I bet there's some pretty hilarious and heartwarming wedding moments from different cultures out there.
Yeah.
So to all our listeners, if you've seen any awkward wedding moments or have interesting traditions from your own cultures, share them with us.
It would be great to hear those stories and see how, even with all the different customs, marriage is something that connects us all.
Wow, it's amazing how that little wedding scene from the language podcast led us to so many different topics.
I know, right? We talked about all the finger names, the meaning behind hand gestures, all those old-fashioned words the priest used, and even the traditions around engagement and wedding rings, plus all those little language details that make it so interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy how language is connected to everything.
Yeah.
It helps us understand all these rituals and traditions and why they're so important.
Definitely. Every word and phrase has a deeper meaning that goes way beyond the dictionary definition.
And the cool thing is, that language is always changing, but it still keeps those connections to the past, all those layers of meaning that make it so fascinating.
Exactly. It's like language is a tapestry woven from all these different threads of human experience. And weddings are a perfect example. All those symbols and traditions are like a canvas for exploring the beauty of language.
I like that. So the next time you're at a wedding, take a minute to really pay attention to the words, the vows, everything. It's more than just a ceremony. It's like a window into history and culture.
You might be surprised by what you discover, all those echoes of the past and the connections we have to people all over the world, even across time.
It makes you realize that even though wedding customs are different everywhere, there's something universal about marriage, something that connects us all. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive. We hope you enjoyed exploring the world of fingers, rings, and wedding words with us.
It's been fun.
Until next time, keep listening for those hidden meanings in language. You never know what you might find. Every conversation is a chance to learn something new about the world around us.
That's the truth.